Donkey Kong doesn't make any sense. And I'm not talking about the basic stuff like how he drives a go-kart or plays tennis. I'm talking about the really weird stuff. Like, who is Uncle Kong? Why does he look at me like that? I need answers! The most I could find was a simple Donkey Kong family tree, which starts off with the OG Donkey Kong, who then turns into Cranky Kong and gets with Wrinkly Kong. Together, they have Donkey Kong Jr. DK Jr. then has Donkey Kong III, who's also our modern DK. And that's it. So now you may ask, where is Uncle Kong? Well, I have sad news for you. That's as far as the Donkey Kong family tree goes. Or at least that's what everyone else says, but I wasn't satisfied with this mediocre tree, so I took matters into my own hands and crafted something which goes far beyond what was thought possible. Hi, I'm Drumpy, and I solved the Donkey Kong family tree. Okay, but first, let's get one thing straight. I didn't get this tree from stealing Miyamoto's diary or anything. Well, I mean, I did steal his diary, but it was only filled with the stuff you'd expect, like Mario and Toad fanfiction, which although very compelling, is not relevant to this tree. So then how did I make this family tree? Through logic and reasoning, and also a lot of guessing. I used all sorts of things to link up Kongs. I used character designs, in-game dialogue, and other random things which allowed me to not only expand the family tree, but include every single Kong. Yes, including Uncle Kong. So let's get into it, starting with Pinky Kong. Using my Math Club President powers, I calculated the integral of Pinky Kong's cosine and confirmed that there's a 100% chance that she is DK Jr.'s sister. Do you get it? Because she's from DK Jr. Math and like math? Okay, but actually it just makes sense that they're siblings. They have the exact same sprite, except Pinky Kong is just pink, obviously. She takes her place as a sister to Junior and the second child of Cranky and Wrinkly. And now the Kong you've all been waiting for, Uncle Kong. Only appearing in the Super Donkey Kong 2 guidebook, he's a confirmed uncle, which places him nicely as Pinky Kong's husband. This also makes him the uncle to DK the Third. Additionally, this placement explains one weird piece of dialogue where he states that he isn't actually a member of the Kong family, which wouldn't make any sense considering his name is Uncle Kong, but it does make sense if he's just referring to how he isn't a blood relative and rather only related by marriage. Okay, also one more random thing. Is Uncle Kong wearing a shirt? And I don't know what would be more weird, him not wearing a shirt at all under his jacket, or his shirt just being the same color as his skin. I don't think this is safe to think about for too long. We need to move on. So Pinky Kong and Uncle Kong didn't just sit around all day playing patty cake. They had a kid. That kid being Funky Kong! Now I can already hear all you Kong purists saying, well, actually, there isn't any support for him being related. Ah, you're actually wrong, because DK and Funky being cousins just makes so much sense. They look too similar to not be closely related. Also, Funky Kong never deconfirms that they aren't cousins. He just always refers to DK as one of his best friends, which isn't too uncommon for cousins. Then also design-wise, the lighter fur Funky Kong would make sense with him descending from Pinky Kong, who obviously has pink fur. And the evidence doesn't end here, but to explain more of the reasoning, I need to add the next two Kongs. Those Kongs being Bluster Kong and Bluster Kong's parents. Bluster Kong is the nephew of good old Uncle Kong, thus making one of his parents, who we never actually see, the brother or sister of Uncle Kong. This reasoning comes from the designs, because they both have the exact same mustache and are the only Kongs to have it. Also, fun fact about Bluster Kong and his parents, they have a monopoly over the barrel market on DK Island, which is a very important market because it's used for all transportation. And guess who else has a monopoly on transportation? Yeah, Funky Kong, who's the only way you can fast travel in the games. So that means that the Uncle Kong line has total control over DK Isle's transportation. They are literally the Rockefellers of DK Isle. Okay, but now for my strongest piece of evidence for this linkage. Bluster Kong isn't just Bluster. He can turn into the man himself, Leolasta, who is the only character in the Donkey Kong series to rival the coolest of Funky Kong. So it's only natural that they're related. Maybe they bought all that coolness with their endless piles of money. Darn you, Uncle Kong, I know it was you who lit my father's barrel factory on fire just because we were producing them at a cheaper price than you were! Now, before we move on to the next edition, let me tell you a story. Thunderstrike! This is Fedora Kong, a Kong banished to only a single appearance. He appeared in an ad for Donkey Kong Land and Nintendo Power. But let me tell you who he is. He's DK Jr. Let's get into the story. Double lightning strike! So actually, to start the story, I need to introduce another character. This character being Bink. Bink was a former Kong, now turned skeleton pirate. He became this way after a tragic boating accident, leading to the death of both him and his entire crew. But the rest of his crew is important. We're gonna be focusing on Bink and Junior, because they were actually good friends in their past. They get up to all the normal kid stuff, like throwing barrels, eating bananas, and committing lots of crimes. But the last one actually caused a lot of problems, because their criminal activity started to backfire. Multiple times they almost got caught for stealing bananas, stealing rhinos, and doing other crazy things. So Junior started worried that this might affect him and his father's reputation. reputation among the Kongs. So he came up with a plan. Bink would join a pirate crew, while Junior stays and acts as a friendly face to the rest of the Kongs. Little do they know, Bink is under all of their noses, stealing bananas beyond compare. This works great for a while. No one suspects stupid little Junior of anything. They all think he's too busy chewing on rocks to commit any crimes. This is until Bink and Junior start to get a little overconfident. They buy a Bugatti, 5 Rolexes, and Bink even chips off all of his teeth chewing on golden bananas. So naturally, people become suspicious of Bink and Junior starts to fear that his criminal activity might start to catch up to him. So Junior does the unthinkable. He hires a Kremlin crew to end his ties with Bink forever, crashing the boat, killing him and his entire crew. After this, Junior tries to have a normal life, starting a family, having a kid, doing all the normal Kong things. But this doesn't last forever, because Junior kinda sorta forgot to pay the Kremlins who he hired to kill Bink, so obviously they're pretty upset. So as Junior stares into his son's eyes, he knows he can't subject DK III to the mistakes of his past. So he leaves, donning the fedora and abandoning everything he once had, his family, his friends, and most of all, his son. It's dark underneath the brim of the fedora. But he isn't alone forever, and that's where we get to the third story. Triple lightning strike, boom, boom, boom. Okay, but this story's a lot more simple than the last one. It's just that DK Jr. had another son as Fedora Kong. That son being Swanky Kong. And now there's lots of reasons for this, but I'm getting kind of creeped out by all these fedoras, so let's cut back to voiceover. So Swanky Kong has always been the odd one out for the Donkey Kong lineup, because he never acknowledges any of the other Kongs as family, despite just being dripped out DK. They really just took the DK model, put on an afro and some rings, and called it a day. But he's the only Kong to share an exact model with DK. Even someone like Funky Kong, who's really similar to Donkey Kong, still has a distinct model. This means it only makes sense for him and DK to be brothers. And then Swanky Kong never acknowledging this fact is explained by his life under the fedora, because he was never able to meet the rest of his family. He never even knew of them, because Fedora Kong and him were so removed from the rest of the Kongs. He's also just clearly following in DK Jr.'s old ways, because the amount he charges me to answer a stupid trivia question is actually criminal. Okay, and now that's some of the reasons why Swanky Kong's DK's brother. And now feel free to leave your nasty comment about why I'm completely wrong, and about how Swanky Kong is actually a son of Fiddlebert from Pikmin 1. Okay, now before we move on to the other Kongs, I have something I need to address. What the heck is wrong with Fedora Kong's chest? No wonder DK Jr. wore that onesie all the time. If I was him, I'd also want to hide this hideous thing at all costs. I swear his chest speaks to me, and not in a cutesy art this speaks to me type of way, in a kill your entire family Jimmy type of way. Anyways, that's all the descendants of Cranky, but that's not all the Kongs, because we have even more Kongs, starting with Cranky's brother. He's the lesser and often forgotten uncle of the series, Uncle Julius. He's from a show that I don't think any of you have heard of called Saturday Supercade. In his appearance, he's confirmed to be Donkey Kong Jr.'s uncle, placing him as the brother of Cranky. His design looks a lot more like the OG Donkey Kong before he turned cranky, and looked much more just like a normal gorilla. Even though he's clearly the inferior uncle, he does add a lot more Kongs to the family tree, starting with Mama. Mama's once again from Saturday Supercade, in another episode you've definitely never seen. In this episode, Donkey Kong brings her a letter from Papa. Papa being the name of her husband. Mama is also one of the only girls in the entire Donkey Kong series, because the Donkey Kong series is more womanless than my school's esports team. Seriously, there's like no girls. So what does Mama do as an important female role model in the Donkey Kong series? She just talks about her husband the entire time. She goes, Papa this, Papa that, Papa, Papa, Papa. Like, shut up, we get it, you like Papa, okay? Though, speaking of Papa, we know that the zoo that we see Mama in is the same zoo that Uncle Julius is in. So it can be assumed that Papa is just a nickname for Uncle Julius. This means that Mama is just obsessed with Uncle Julius, and that's her entire character. Nice one, Donkey Kong. This is going right up there next to the sexist Funky Kong clip. I'll tell ya, woman at the wheel, more like death on the road. This then leads us into our next Kong, Sonny. Sonny is the son of Mama and Papa, aka Uncle Julius. He also appears in the one episode with Mama and is the one to give Donkey Kong the letter. And Sony only gets a total of like 3 minutes of screen time, but it must have been more than enough for him, because he managed to have 2 whole kids in that time. Those kids being Chunky Kong and Kiddy Kong. Now, even though we all know that Kiddy Kong is clearly superior to Chunky Kong, they are still siblings, as confirmed in the Donkey Kong 64 manual. But them being sons of Sonny would make sense, because they both look a lot more like traditional gorillas, just like Sonny. Oh, and one more thing. What does Sony wear? A blue shirt? Wait, what does Chunky Kong wear? A blue shirt? What does Kiddy Kong wear? A blue onesie? I mean shirt. There's definitely a shirt. That's a shirt. You cannot deny the blue shirt lore. They have the linkage. I'm a #1 blue shirt fan for life. You cannot take that away from me. Moving on from our glorious blue shirt boys, we get on to Dixie and Tiny, who are the cousins of Chunky and Kiddy. This leaves a really awkward gap in the tree between Sonny and Dixie and Tiny, because we know for sure that they're cousins of Chunky and Kiddy, but we do not know who their parent is. At least we used to not know, because now we have the obvious inclusion of Ringo. Sir Richard Starley, known as Ringo Starr, is an English musician, singer, songwriter, and actor. Born in Liverpool in 1940, he's best known as the drummer of the Beatles. Stars unconventional drumming styles, characterized by his whiplash wiper. Wait. This isn't where Ringo goes. Ringo's star is later in the list. We're talking about the other Ringo. This Ringo is the Ringo from the Donkey Kong action special. Now, this is a Kong you've definitely never heard of, because he's actually the cartoonist of Donkey Kong within the story. So yeah, he really gets up to some fourth wall breaking shenanigans. Very similar to his daughter, Tiny Kong, who just decides to age up in Donkey Kong Barrel Blast and breaks the cannon. He also is the only Kong to have long blonde hair, a defining feature of both Tiny Kong and Dixie Kong. Okay, so that's it for the Uncle Julius line, but we're not done with the family tree, because now we need to act like my wife during an argument and bring up the past, looking at Kongs that came before Cranky, starting with Cranky's great-great-grandfather. We never actually see this fella, but I imagine him as Cranky, but somehow older and crankier. We know about him because Cranky just says he is a great-grandfather. It doesn't get more simple than that. This does leave a little awkward gap in the tree though, which I can somewhat resolve through the regrettable inclusion of Baby Kong. I've always hated Baby Kong, and I still do. But do you know what I hate more than Baby Kong? Is all these so-called Kong experts coming in here and spreading mis-Kong-formation. They get all high and mighty saying that Baby Kong is obviously the younger version of DK the Third without looking at the very obvious and accessible facts. Because if you use more than 1% of your brain capacity, it's pretty obvious that this makes zero sense. So basically, Baby Kong first appeared in Yoshi's Island. And in that same game, Baby Mario made an appearance. This means that Baby Kong and Mario were babies at the same time. So if we fast forward a bit, we can jump to when Mario's an adult and obviously fights Cranky Kong. But then this doesn't make any sense with the previous theory, because Cranky Kong is DK the Third's grandfather, meaning that Mario was a baby with Baby Kong before DK the Third was even born. So yeah, unless Mario likes to dress up in diapers on the weekend, I think this theory is pretty obviously a wrong conjecture. Conjecture, do you get it? Conjecture, like conjecture, but Kong, like, ugh. Let's move on. And now the next Kong is Cranky Kong's great aunt, because he talks about having an aunt exactly one time, that aunt being Great Aunt Grouchy. This then places her alongside Cranky's great grandfather. And even though we never actually see her, we do know two important things about her. She owns a magic spellbook, and she's really grouchy, which leads into our next addition, Ghastly King. He's the son of Great Aunt Grouchy, a woman so grouchy she turned her son into the most evil Kong ever. She also passed down her magic spellbook, which allowed him to turn into this crime against nature and also let him do lots of evil things. Starting with taking in Kung Fu as his apprentice, Ghastly King then trained him in his dark ways and turned him into Karate Kong. This explains why Karate Kong just looks like an older evil version of Kung Fu, because that's exactly what he is. Then Karate Kong decides to train 3 more Kongs and pass down Ghastly King's evil ways. Those Kongs being Dread Kong, Sumo Kong, and Ninja Kong, all of which were trained from birth to be the servants of Ghastly King. Oh, also, just for a little clarification, when I'm putting all 3 of these Kongs under Karate Kong, I'm not trying to say that Karate Kong was pregnant with Dread Kong or anything. It's just to illustrate how Karate Kong changed them into the evil versions of the Kongs they are now. Or who knows, maybe Karate Kong really was pregnant with them. Ghastly King can do whatever he wants. Speaking of which, if we circle back to Ghastly King, he didn't just train an apprentice. He also committed a ton of war crimes and captured a bunch of Kongs, and he's just overall a really bad guy. Those Kongs he captured being chain Kongs, he then experimented on these captured Kongs, resulting in the creation of Menki Kongs, an evil version of a Kong species which was twisted by Ghastly King's evil experiments and made into the weird long orange Kongs we see today. Though the Menki Kongs didn't stay evil forever, because the newer generations are actually pretty chill. Namely, Redneck Kong, who was a planned character for Diddy Kong Pilot but went unused. Lanky Kong, the one with the funny face from the DK rap, and Candy Kong. Whoa, I know I really set off the Kong-thusians this time, but let me explain. Candy Kong is just so clearly a Menki Kong, and I don't know how we didn't see it before. Think about it. She has the defining orange fur, which only the Menkis have, and the weirdly long proportions, placing her snugly next to Lanky Kong in the Menki family line. It's honestly baffling how perfectly she fits as a Menki, but I'm all for it. Call me a Candy Kong truther all the way. Oh, also, I always see all these people giving all this love to Candy Kong, but I never see anyone lusting for Lanky. Where are all my Lanky lovers at? Oh, and one more thing with Ghastly King. I guess one morning he was just feeling a little more evil than normal, so decided to make a bunch of giant evil Kong robots. And that's how we got Cyber Kongs. But honestly, I'm not complaining, because Cyber Kongs are like the coolest Donkey Kong characters, so I guess thank you, Ghastly King. But not for all the war crime stuff, just for the cool robots. Now that's actually it for the DK family tree. We connected back every Kong into a common Kong species. species. Okay, well, not actually every Kong, but this is where I need to reveal another secret. I didn't solve the DK family tree. I solved the entire Kong evolutionary line. So let's start with the Kong's closest ancestor, the Ucky Kongs. And now they're not called Ucky because they're gross, unlike you, who hasn't clipped their toenails in over a month. What are you, a hobbit? They're actually called Ucky because they're descendants of the Ukiki. The Ukiki being the generic monkey species in the Mario series. So yeah, now I've linked back the Kongs to something that's completely un-Donkey Kong related. So figuring out the Ukiki's family tree can be someone else's problem. I no longer have to deal with it because I'm no Mario YouTuber. I'm a true blue Donkey Kong tuber through and through. Speaking of me, I make lots of fun Donkey Kong videos and other videos too, so you should make sure to subscribe because currently I'm at negative 1,000 subscribers and I'd like if I had it at least in the positives. Now if we go back to Ucky Kong, we need to talk about a variant of Ucky Kong. That variant being the Snow Ucky Kongs. So the Snow Ucky Kong are exactly what they sound like, a snow version of the Ucky Kong. But from the Snow Ucky Kong, we get a very important Donkey Kong character, Eddie the Mean Old Yeti. This is my favorite Kong, and I'm happy to announce that he isn't even really a Kong. But this placement does make the most sense, considering that he is a Yeti and not a Kong. So him looking like a Kong is explained by being related to the Kong species. Wait, so if Eddie is a Yeti, does that make all the Kongs kind of like Bigfoot? Okay, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe Mario was just fighting Bigfoot the entire time. Anyways, enough speculation. Let's move on. Okay, now if we go back to the Ukiki, we have one more species to talk about. That species being the helper monkeys. This is where we get all the monkeys who aren't really Kongs in the series, but are still technically Kongs. Those being Monkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and Alarm Kong. These are all clearly not gorillas, which is like a defining characteristic of the Kong series, and they fit better as helper monkeys. So they were all probably just like adopted into the Kong family. So like Donkey Kong adopted Diddy Kong and made him carry around all his bananas and stuff. But with that, we're done with all the characters in the Kong series. But now let's do a speed run of the entire tree. Ready, go! First up is Ukiki. From the Ukiki, we get the Ucky Kongs. We also get the Snow Ucky Kongs. From the Snow Ucky Kongs, we get Eddie the Mean Old Yeti. Going back to the Ukiki, we also get the helper monkeys. From the helper monkeys, we get Monkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and Alarm Kong. Now, from the Ucky Kongs, we get the entire Kong species. Then we get Great Aunt Grouchy. From Great Aunt Grouchy, we get Ghastly King. From Ghastly King, we get Kung Fu, who turns into Karate Kong. Then Karate Kong raises Dread Kong, Sumo Kong, and Ninja Kong. Back to Ghastly King, he also captures Kongs, those Kongs being chained Kongs. Those chained Kongs then turn into Mankey Kongs. From Mankey Kong, we get Redneck Kong, Lanky Kong, and Candy Kong. Then lastly, from Ghastly King, we get Cyber Kong. Then we jump over in the tree to Great Grandfather Kong, who then has Baby Kong. Baby Kong then has Cranky Kong and Uncle Julius. Uncle Julius is the same as Papa and Mary's mama. Uncle Julius and Mama then have two kids, Sony and Ringo. Sony is Chunky Kong and Kitty Kong. Ringo has Tiny Kong and Dixie Kong. Back to Cranky Kong, he then gets with Wrinkly Kong and has Pinky Kong and DK Jr. Pinky Kong then gets with Uncle Kong and has Funky Kong. Uncle Kong is siblings with Bluster Kong's parents, who then have Bluster Kong, who can turn into Leo Luster. DK Jr. then has Donkey Kong, who adopts Diddy Kong. DK Jr. also turns into Fedora Kong after Bink dies. And as Fedora Kong, he is Swanky Kong. That's the complete Donkey Kong family tree. And I can already hear what a lot of you guys are saying. Drumpy, I thought this was going to be the 100% confirmed real Donkey Kong family tree. Well, I have one response to that, and it's actually a quote from the creator of Donkey Kong himself, Shigeru Miyamoto. Shut up! Okay, so I have to admit, that isn't actually a real quote from Shigeru Miyamoto, in case you couldn't tell, but I think kind of represents his thoughts towards the games. Because, bro, nothing is canon in the Donkey Kong series. The Donkey Kong series has changed hands so many times that there's no, like, internal consistent lore document. But I do think that the tree I made is one of the most satisfactory out there, connecting every Kong in a pretty reasonable and fun way. But actually, if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and I'll make an entire video dedicated to answering your questions about this family tree. But anyways, I've been Drumpy. There's a video there, or something, and subscribe. I don't know. Okay, see you later. Bye. Wait, what about Ringo?